What's up guys, this is Darkbblue. I am a player that focuses mainly on combat. And it's been a long time. I think the essence of JRPGs is its turn-based combat, which can fully include abundant strategies. But someone's told me I was wrong. Combat isn't that important in JRPGs. So, is it true? Do JRPGs really need combat? Recently, I played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and let's take it as an example to think a bit about this question. Now remember to like and subscribe, and let's begin. So why do I play Final Fantasy VII? To be honest, I was hoping to find out how its combat has evolved from purely turn-based to current semi-real-time combat. The first chapter allowed me to initially experience these interesting and inviting combat mechanics. Well, though it's indeed inviting, the first chapter showed me only a small part of it, and I was hoping to see something more. But the game didn't do it. I was provided a lot of cutscenes and stories. Well, I was wandering around the neighborhood and there were no more combats. With all those cutscenes shown, it came to my mind that opinion I once heard. In JRPGs, it's stories instead of combat that matters most. Now as Final Fantasy VII is showing a lot about stories, I was thinking maybe this opinion is correct and I was wrong. Strange though, I have held such a strong belief about combat in JRPGs. It must be so strong for a reason, and I guess it's because the last JRPG I played was Tales of Arise, and Tales series is indeed focused on combat. Let's see one example. In dungeons, Tales of Arise provides much more enemies, and actually its dungeons are mainly about fighting all the time. But in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I am doing a lot of puzzles and I'm opening doors, crossing obstacles, climbing ladders, etc. These things are taking a large proportion of my time instead of combat. Well, now it's clear my opinion towards JRPGs was in fact influenced by my last experience in Tales of Arise. In Tales, combat is important, but this is not always true with all JRPGs. Since we see combat isn't that important in JRPGs, we shall pay attention to some other aspects, right? So what else can you expect from Final Fantasy VII Remake? I have to say, this game represents the greatest achievement of industrialized JRPG production. One of the most important things in JRPGs is stories. Usually we are saving the world and in the meantime meeting a lot of new friends. Sadly, as this whole story is so long, many dialogues of side quests show only text and no voices. But in Final Fantasy VII Remake, things are different. Even the greetings of merchants have a voice. I can imagine how much money they've spent to make it. Besides combat and story, the fun of exploring dungeons is also part of JRPG. The map in Final Fantasy VII Remake is very helpful that dungeons aren't really difficult, but fun doesn't always come from difficulty. Actually, dungeon themes in this game are really various, and this is what makes it interesting. Here you can see typical industrial style areas, and there is a chapter where you climb up in a ruined city. There are two chapters about destroying some facilities. At first I thought, well, maybe the second time will be boring. But it turned out to provide some novel mechanics, letting me to customize how the chapter boss would be adjusted. Well, this adds some additional fun upon dungeon theme. And there is one more thing I want to mention, environment details. You can hear the voices of background NPCs, and especially how they change as I move around. It makes this game more real, and such details aren't very common in JRPGs. All in all, after realizing combat isn't that important, I indeed have discovered some other interesting aspects in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I have ignored them before and now I'm glad I didn't miss them all the time. But what if we say JRPGs don't need combat? Is it correct? Well, I don't think so. Though it's not the core, it's still part of JRPGs. In JRPGs, the most basic rule of combat is to help provide the overall atmosphere, instead of providing the fun of combat itself. If saving the world and cultivating friendship only existed in stories, it would be much less interesting. And it is combat that makes players participate in this experience. Therefore, we can come to the conclusion that in order to make sure every player can have such experience, combat in JRPGs should be really easy to handle. But if it can provide some in-depth experience for players like me as well, this game could become even better. With that being said, now I think it's really natural for JRPGs to choose turn-based combat. Turn-based combat is not demanding for players' ability. You need to only think, and there's nothing action you have to control. And you can even grind a bit to make it easier. In the meantime, turn-based combat also makes it possible to have some in-depth strategies, so this is a good choice. And Final Fantasy VII Remake does an even better job. Its combat is in a semi-real-time style, but it also provides a classical option to return to turn-based fashion. Since it's an RPG game, you can grind to make it easier. But if you want to dive deep into it, this game surely provides something interesting. You can find many videos on this topic, and I'll make some too. To conclude, it's of course not correct to say JRPGs don't need combat, but this is still closer to truth than saying combat is the core of JRPGs. The truth is, combat is one part of JRPGs. It's not the core, but still necessary. And the primary function of combat is to provide the atmosphere of cultivating friendships and saving the world, while in-depth content of combat is only optional. Only with this new understanding can I better appreciate every aspect of the fun of JRPGs. Now, if you like my story and if you want to join me into depth of games, just like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, see you around.